Hello, welcome. This is, if you missed it, I'm going all the way back to lesson one. The month of September was designated for German fairy tales. The brothers Grimm, Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, were the most influential when it came to collection of folklore throughout Germany, Europe, and the world, because they were able to collect and retell and publish 7 editions, which ended up being over 200 fairy tales. Now, what's interesting about the Grimm's brothers fairy tales is they're blunt, brusque, absurd, comical, and tragic. Not your Disney versions of fairy tales. They were never intended to be read by children. They were harsh because the Brothers Grimm intended to reflect German traditions. They wanted to preserve these tales because they felt they were a reflection of Germany's difficult conditions. So we know that folklore, whether it's a fable or a fairy tale, is a story about the human condition. So you're going to see characters with massive flaws. One of my favorite stories today that we're going to start with, actually, they've done musicals and plays on the Frog Prince. This version is from 1905, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. One fine evening, a young princess put on her bonnet and clogs and went out to take a walk by herself in a wood. And when she came to a cool spring of water that rose in the midst of it, she sat herself down to rest a while. Now, she had a golden ball in her hand, which was her favorite plaything, and she was always tossing it up into the air and catching it again as it fell. After a time, she threw it up so high that she missed catching it as it fell, and the ball bounded away and rolled along upon the ground, till at last it fell down into the spring. The princess looked into the spring after her ball, but it was very deep, so deep she could not see the bottom of it. Then she began to bewail her loss and said, "Alas, if I could only get my ball again, I would give all my fine clothes and jewels and everything that I have in the world." Whilst she was speaking, a frog put its head out of the water and said, "Princess, why do you weep so bitterly?" "Alas," she said, "what can you do for me, you nasty frog? My golden ball has fallen into the spring." The frog said, "I want not your pearls and jewels and fine clothes, but if you will love me and let me live with you and eat off your golden plate and sleep upon your bed, I will bring you your ball again." "What nonsense," thought the princess. "This silly frog is talking. He can never even get out of the spring to visit me, though he may be able to get my ball for me, and therefore I will tell him he shall have what he asks." So she said to the frog, "Well, if you will bring me my ball, I will do all you ask." Then the frog put his head down and dived deep under the water, and after a little while he came up again with the ball in his mouth and threw it on the edge of the spring. As soon as the young princess saw her ball, she ran to pick it up, and she was so overjoyed to have it in her hand again, she never thought of the frog, but ran home with it as fast as she could. The frog called after her, "Stay, princess, take me with you as you said." But she did not stop to hear a word. The next day, just as the princess had sat down to dinner, she heard a strange noise: tap, tap, plash, plash, as if something was coming up the marble staircase. And soon afterwards, there was a gentle knock at the door, and a little voice cried out and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." Then the princess ran to the door and opened it, and there she saw the frog, whom she had quite forgotten. At this sight, she was sadly frightened, and shutting the door as fast as she could, came back to her seat. The king, her father, seeing that something had frightened her, asked her what was the matter. "There's a nasty frog," she said, "at the door, that lifted my ball for me out of the spring this morning. I told him that he should live with me here, thinking that he could never get out of the spring, but there he is at the door, and he wants to come in." While she was speaking, the frog knocked again at the door, and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." Then the king said to the princess, "As you have given your word, you must keep it. So go and let him in." She did so, and the frog hopped into the room and then straight on, tap, tap, plash, plash, from the bottom of the room to the top, till he came up close to the table where the princess sat. "Pray lift me upon chair," said he to the princess, "and let me sit next to you." As soon as she had done this, the frog said, "Put your plate nearer to me, that I may eat out of it." Yes, she did. And when he'd eaten as much as he could, he said, "Now I'm tired. Carry me upstairs and put me into your bed." And the princess, though very unwilling, took him up in her hand and put him upon the pillow of her own bed, where he slept all night long. As soon as it was light, he jumped up, hopped downstairs, and went out of the house. "Now then," thought the princess, "at last he's gone, and I shall be troubled with him no more." But she was mistaken, for when night came again, she heard the same tapping at the door. And the frog came once more and said, "Open the door, my princess dear. Open the door to thy true love here, and mind the words that thou and I said by the fountain cool in the greenwood shade." And when the princess opened the door, the frog came in, slept upon her pillow as before, till the morning broke. And the third night he did the same. But when the princess awoke on the following morning, she was astonished to see, instead of the frog, a handsome prince, gazing on her with the most beautiful eyes she had ever seen. Sorry, I have something stuck in my throat. And standing at the head of her bed. He told her that he had been enchanted by a spiteful fairy who had changed him into a frog, and that he'd been fated so to abide till some princess should take him out of the spring and let him eat from her plate and sleep upon her bed for 3 nights. "You," said the prince, "have broken his cruel charm, and now I have nothing to wish for but that you should go with me into my father's kingdom, where I will marry you and love you as long as you live." The young princess, you may be sure, was not long in saying yes to all this. And as they spoke, a gay coach drove up with 8 beautiful horses decked with plumes of feathers and a golden harness, and behind the coach rode the prince's servant, faithful Heinrich, who had bewailed the misfortunes of the dear master during his enchantment so long and so bitterly that his heart had well nigh burst. They then took leave of the king and got into the coach with 8 horses, and all set out full of joy and merriment for the prince's kingdom, which they reached safely, and there they lived happily a great many years. Okay, so now I'm going to share the screen. So we're going to go through the story elements. So first and foremost, we have a young princess, a king, and a frog and a king, that order. I always put them in order of importance. You can't have a story without a conflict. So the princess, the ball's not the conflict. The conflict is she makes a promise to the frog and she never intended to keep it. The frog comes back and demands that she honor her word. The king forced the princess who gave her word to abide by the frog's commands. So we have a story beginning with this young princess who's out enjoying a walk in the woods. She throws up the ball too high, unable to catch it, it rolls into the water. So the princess says something really interesting here. She says, "If I could only get my ball again, I would give up all my fine clothes and jewels and everything I have in the world." So I'm right here. What does this say about her? Well, she's pretty affluent. She's a spoiled little girl. She's going to give all her fine clothes and jewels, everything she has in the world, for a ball. That means she doesn't value the expensive things she has. So she even starts this conversation with the frog. That should have been a red flag. The frog is talking. So we have a supernatural element here. The frog says something interesting. "I want not your pearls and jewels and fine clothes." Now, why would he say that? Well, we know now because we've read the story. He's already rich. He's already a prince in his own right. He doesn't need her wealth. What he needs is her to promise him so he can break the curse. Let me love me, let me live with you, eat from your golden plate, sleep on your bed. I will bring you your ball. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous, she's thinking, but she agrees. So then the frog comes back the next evening, 3 times, rule of 3. He says, open the door, my princess dear, open the door to thy true love. Here, that's not the important part. It's mind the words. He's saying, remember your promise. 3 times he has to remind her. The first time she opens the door, she slams it really quickly. And why does her dad get involved? Well, he's the king. I'm guessing the king has seen supernatural things before, maybe even a curse before. And he probably knows she better abide by it because she could be the cursed one as well. So he's saying, you honor your word. And it's good advice. So then this falling action is just really interesting. He kind of tests her. And we know that fairy tales usually put the protagonist to a test. Lift me upon your chair. Let me sit next to you. Put your plate near to me that I may eat out of it. Now I'm tired. Put me into your bed. Woo. And I'm guessing she did it pretty reluctantly, but she did do it. So she does this for 3 nights. The morning after the 3rd night, she wakes up to see a handsome prince. He was enchanted by a spiteful fairy who had changed him into a frog. He had been fated to abide. Abide means remain till some princess should take him out of the spring. Let him eat from her plate, sleep upon her bed for 3 nights. So 3 things. And then, of course, shocker, they marry and live happily ever after. When someone makes a promise, they should keep it. This is the message, the theme from this story. When someone keeps their word, they are trusted and valued. He didn't have to marry her. So why did he marry her? Because he could trust her. He probably knew she did it reluctantly, that she wasn't really happy about it. But she did do it. So the definition of a promise, an assurance that we will do something, give something, or arrange something. We declare something will happen. So we want to make sure that we're not using the word promise, 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 which you're going to be tempted to do. It's a swear, a pledge, a vow, an oath, an assurance, a word of honor. I'll add another one here. It's a covenant. So our outline here, I'm going to go to the body paragraphs only here. The story reflected how children, teens, and parents often make promises, but in reality, they are either committed to keep them or fail to honor them. We've all been guilty of breaking a promise, all of us. And we've all been pretty good about honoring our word. So what you're going to do today is really fun. The 3 topics you pick in the first body paragraph are going to really talk about what happens when a child, teen, or a parent honors a promise. And there's a cause and effect relationship here. It builds trust, they gain respect, and it really does promote their reputation. What I mean by promote their reputation is they are thought more highly of. So one example involves a child who makes a promise and keeps it. You're going to back it up and show how trust is earned. A second example shows how a teen fulfills their oath. And a third example showcases how a parent swears they will help their child. And I think my students can all relate to parents making a promise and not following through and how you feel about that. But I'm guessing you've done the same thing to them. You know, I promised to clean my room, or I promised to get off my game system, and time goes by and you don't keep your word. We've all done it. So what you're going to do in your body paragraphs is kind of different. I haven't done this before. The 3 examples you use in the top, you're going to use in the bottom, the same 3, but you're going to show me what happens when they don't keep their promise. Okay, so for example, Sally borrows a book from her friend Rita, I'm right here, and promises she will return it when she finishes it. A few days later, Sally gives the book back to Rita, thanking her for allowing her to read it. Rita knows she can trust Sally to keep her word, so she has no problem sharing books with her. In fact, their friendship has grown stronger than ever. Okay, so that's going to show respect, trust, and a deepening of their how highly they regard each other. A second example shows a teen who fulfills their promise to their coach. Jason told his basketball coach he would practice his shots at home until he became more accurate. His coach noticed at the next game, Jason was swishing more shots into the net and scoring more points than ever before. Jason's coach respected his efforts, making him one of the starting 5 players on the team. Even his teammates, that should be past tense, passed the ball to him, knowing he could be counted on. Okay. A third situation showcases how a parent swears they will help their child. I keep using the word help a lot, so I'm just going to make that assist. Mila asked her dad if he could help drive her to a volunteer food bank over the weekend. Her dad promised her he'd be happy to not only drive her, but also go work with her. I just noticed I was using the word help a lot. Mila and her dad are known at the volunteer center as the father and daughter duo who enjoy passing out food to the needy. Mila now knows she can ask her dad to help in the future when she needs him. So in each of the above examples that you're going to choose, and please don't copy my examples, I mean, at least modify them. Keeping one's word is vital to maintaining healthy and strong relationships. Okay, here's the fun part. You get to take the same 3 examples and show what happens when they don't keep their word. So Sally borrows a book from her friend Rita and promises she will return it when she finishes reading it. A few days later, Rita asks Sally for her book. Unfortunately, Sally was careless and lost Rita's book. Rita is furious and never allows Sally to borrow anything she has again. In fact, their friendship has been tested since this incident. So you're using the same example, just showing the opposite. What happens when you break a promise? So if once you do the first body paragraph, the second one shall be easy. So let's talk about Jason when he breaks his word to his coach. He told his coach he'd practice his shots until he became more accurate. Jason told his coach noticed that the next game, Jason continued to miss his shots, which should have improved if he'd practiced like he said he would. Jason's coach stopped believing in Jason and allowed another player to take his spot in the starting 5. His teammates were disappointed in him too. Okay, finally, this is Mila and her dad. Mila asked her dad if he could help drive her to a volunteer food bank over the weekend. Her dad promised he'd be happy to not only drive, but go with her. The problem was Mila's dad was called into work on Saturday. So Mila no-showed her volunteer assignment. Now Mila and her dad were known at the volunteer center as the father and daughter who failed to do their part. In the future, Mila knows her dad's work is more important than her events. So in the bottom paragraph, you're going to show each of the above examples. Refusing or failing to keep one's words creates distrust and division among relationships. So really, this is about a promise. So your application, your real world application today is showing that just like in the story, which was written in the 1800s, people were flawed back then. They would break a promise. And we know today it's important to honor your word. I think it's even more important to really be careful not to make a promise if you know you can't keep it, right? But that's really what this story is talking about. And that concludes lesson 1. I appreciate you watching, and I'm sorry if you missed the class. Remember that you can always come on another day. And with flu season, I know a lot of kids are sick right now. You can always shoot me an email. It's going to have to be several hours before class, but you can always watch an online class if you're up for it. I can always arrange that either on your class day or later in the week. So just know that that's an option. You're not stuck with just a Zoom recording. And most of my students know that I'm flexible with that. So if you don't know that and you're watching this, you don't have to be doing that. Okay, I'm going to conclude the lesson. Thank you for watching.